So it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. What does that mean? The jar is a metaphor for your life. And the label on the jar is a description of who you are. Unfortunately for a lot of people, someone else probably put the label on your jar or their jar, and all they know is what they see from the inside. Now, I happen to have two jars with me. One, can you see that? It's a jar of bananas. What? The other is a jar of tomatoes. You see something different? Well, for those of you who are highly perceptive, you know the labels are wrong. You're seeing a jar of apples and a jar of limes labeled as bananas and tomatoes. And I can only imagine what the apples and the limes are thinking. Someone put the labels on those jars, effectively saying what the contents were, whether correct or not. Now, obviously, apples and limes can't read, but if they could, do you think they would live out their existence as bananas and tomatoes? Suppose one of those apples and one of those limes got outside the jar and looked at the labels. It would change their perspective, their lot in life, so to speak. You see, oftentimes we live out a life from a label that was put on by someone else that we're reading from inside the jar. And that's what happens in our lives. Your parents, your teachers, your friends, your relatives all put labels on your jar. Because you're inside the jar, you can't read the label, but it determines who you are. It's the label you think you have. And this occurred at our last meeting. Some of you were here when Dr. Gale told us that she was effectively removing the label of psychologist from her jar, from her business. In essence, that label was defining and constraining who she wanted to be and how she was running her business. In my opinion, perfect example of somebody getting outside the jar. She knew she was a different person from that label, no longer limited by someone else's label. And that's what this message is about for you. What labels have been put on your jar? Are they valid? How do you change them? I'm going to share two stories with you. One's a true story, and one is a metaphor. I want you to see how important it is to identify the labels and have a plan how you can get outside your jar. Now, hopefully you're going to feel so good about your opportunities to be happier, healthy, and more successful in your life. Sound like a good plan? Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to ask you to stretch a bit. I want you to come back with me. I want you to know or feel what it was like to be in a very difficult time in your life and have other people wanting to put labels on you, but you may have done something different. So come back in time with me to the year 2015. As Joe mentioned, I was homeless and broke. I'm at the end of a 23-year marriage, a 28-year relationship. I'm homeless. I'm driving a borrowed car, and due to these circumstances, I only had $1.67 to my name and starting a business. I remember one day, I'll never forget it. I was standing in my friend's driveway under a hot Alabama sun. I hadn't seen my twin 9-year-old girls in a while. I wanted to drive across town to get them ice cream at McDonald's. But I didn't have enough money for gas to get across town, much less the money to buy them ice cream at McDonald's. Now, how would you feel as a parent? Oh, and to boot, I was 184 pounds with a 34-inch waist. Not good on a 5'6" frame, I assure you. So what kind of label do you think that I had at the time? Poor, fat, miserable? Yeah, that could have been my label. But I had decided to get outside the jar and read a different label for my life. 7 years later, I'm not poor, I'm not fat, I'm not miserable. Happier than I've ever been, in spite of what other people may have wanted to label me. I wasn't going to allow anyone other than me to label my jar. And you don't have to either. Now the second story, the metaphor. It's about a young man named Cephas. Nice young man, came from a good home. Older brother, younger sister, parents who loved each other. Your average middle-class family. His parents were grounded in some pretty strict fundamental religious beliefs and values and expected the same of Cephas. They insisted on appropriate behavior, and they made sure that Cephas was in church every time the doors were open, 2 times on Sunday, and if that wasn't enough, let's throw in a Wednesday night. His parents didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't chew, or run with those who do. To Cephas, God was this big judge in the sky waiting to smack you if you sinned. Cephas thought that just about everything he thought of as fun was sin. Label, I was born a bad person. He learned that somehow money wasn't good and that rich people only got rich from ill-gotten gains. Label, rich people are greedy. The bottom line was that Cephas felt that he couldn't be successful in life if he questioned the label or the values and beliefs of other people. In fact, he thought the values and beliefs of his parents could never be questioned, even though they conflicted innately with him of what he felt to be true. But then one day, he began to question others' values and beliefs. He became brave. He stopped looking to the left or the right for answers. He had never thought about looking up until this one day. A day that would change him for the rest of his life and put him on a path towards a great life. This day he looked up, and what he saw radically changed his life. He saw a perfectly round hole above him. What could be beyond this hole, he thought. He reached deep inside himself for strength. He replaced his fears with his dreams. And with all his might, he stretched up to reach the edge of this hole, and he pulled himself up and out. What he saw on the other side was glorious. Blue skies, unobstructed by clouds. Wide open spaces, freedom, opportunity. And in that moment, he turned around to see where he had come from. It was a jar. And the label on the outside of that jar read, success. He had been reading the label from inside the jar. His name wasn't Cephas after all. It was success. What label do you see inside your jar? Who put that label on? Take a hard look at your values and your belief systems, your labels. Are they really your own? Or, like a lot of people, did you adopt a value and belief system, listen closely, from those you wanted most to be accepted by? Parents, teachers, friends. The need for acceptance is a strong addiction, sometimes more powerful than the need for self-preservation. Sometimes because of the need for acceptance by those we love, we accept their labels. Now I want to share a few examples of labels that may have been put on you by other people. Greedy, their label. Your label, resourceful. Their label, fat. Your label, food connoisseur. Their label, ADHD. Your label, creative. Their label, introvert. Your label, mindful. Their label, aloof. Your label, selective. I think you get the point. So here's what you can do if you think this makes sense. Spend some time thinking about what labels have been put on your jar by other people. If you put your own label on your own jar, what would it say? Because that's who you really are. Now here's the takeaway. Ask 3 people in your life. Don't tell them what it's for. Just say, hey, your spouse, lover, somebody that's important to you. And say, I want you to take 3 jars. Imagine them as me in 3 categories: money, health, personality. Label what you think of that. Then I want you to do the same thing on your 3 jars. Then what I want you to do is take the 2 and look at them, compare the labels, and ask which labels make me happier, which labels bring me more joy, which labels will make me more successful. Now, back to these 2 jars behind me. The labels are incorrect. As a Genius Network member, you put your own labels on. Now, get out of your jar and start labeling you. Joel?